Slightly out of sync.
Missed the timing on that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 20. And you'll have to excuse me leaning in like this close to Andy, but we've had technical issues as per.
Yeah. As one of our guests mentioned about 2 minutes ago, the bromance is continuing. I have to get close to him now.
Yeah.
But we've had microphone issues. We've had to ship Tom Moir in from deepest darkest Fenland to have the other mic because we had issues. But we couldn't quite get the other two in person, but we have them in situ, ready and waiting. So should we get them in?
Let's get them in.
All right, chaps.
There you go. How is everyone?
Oh, good.
Very good.
Yeah. Not sure what to expect with this podcast, though. So.
Well, neither are we, so join the club.
Yeah.
We never expect anything, so it's par for the course.
A fantastic achievement on getting to 20 and not killing each other and getting loads of good moments, good responses, good comments, good interaction in the community. It's been a royal success, I'd say.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. And I'm sure Andy does as well.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. That's great. Tom asked me, like during the week, we had a practice, myself and Tom. Dan's more relaxed. He just turned up and just pressed play or something. And Tom said, what are you going to do to start off with? And I thought, that's a very good question. And we have a package. We have a package sent in by Rob and Sam Lloyd.
Nice.
Now, they asked me not to open it until episode 20, so I think the privilege should go to Charlie.
I think I was instructed to smell it first as well. And there's a definite scent, but I'm not going to give anything away yet. We'll open it up and see what we've got.
Yes,
I hope we haven't been stitched up.
Yeah.
I'll have a little peek first.
Hello to everyone in the comments.
It's not what I thought it was. Should we read the note first? There's a note and a parcel. We'll read the note. I'm assuming this is a note. Could be a picture. Oh Christ! It stinks.
Oh God! Look. Oh.
It says already scented for you. Don't open until you film the next podcast. There's only one, so an arm wrestle would be funny to watch to decide who gets it. Fishes on fluorocarbon. Less is more with the retrieve. Lightly bounce the rod tip to make it twitch. Christ, this just sounded like an erotic novel. A straight retrieve will likely end with Pike biting you off. Enjoy. The twins.
Tom, smell that.
What is that?
Oh, it stinks.
So, this is a...
Oh, garlic.
Hold on.
Oh.
A duo Shinmushi.
Dan missed it.
Yeah, I'll go close up. There you go.
Looks like a dragonfly to me. Is that sort of what it is?
Yeah, it's
is it like a cicada one?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a cicada. So it's the duo Shinmushi. It's got lots of Japanese writing on it and impressive looking packaging. So yeah, we'll have
a couple of podcasts ago, we said they owed us one, didn't they? So
yeah, I forget what we was holding them to ransom, weren't they, over something?
Right,
You're giving away their secret scent, which I think they've put over. Oh Christ, it stinks!
It just shows how tight they are. They've only given us one.
I know.
Boys, what are you doing?
Yeah,
we will have the arm wrestle.
25 quid. Those things.
They are. Yeah, they are.
They can afford it.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. We really do.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Evening, everyone. It's nice to see the comments rolling in already. Questions are good as well. Questions are good.
Bring the questions. We want the questions.
So just before we get a few more comments in, Tom and Dan, let's go to Dan first. Do you use scent on your lures?
I do now, yeah. I never did until this last winter, though. Well, apart from lures that already came scented, but I went to Predator Tackle and I was informed that a certain scent was like the best thing ever. And it would make like a night and day difference on like certain conditions and that. So yeah, I ended up buying that scent, trying it out a little bit through the winter. And yeah, I did have situations where I went from casting without a bite, trying a little bit of this scent on it, and then immediately getting bites. And yeah, so that really sold me on scent. And yeah, in certain situations it definitely works. Slower baits on the bottom in winter is when I use scent. I don't think it matters too much more in summer when the fish are moving. But cool. I think
that's like the sort of similar sort of thing we came to.
Yeah. So Tom, what's your take on it?
It's
Tom
one of those
H.
Oh,
things
Tom
that
H. Yeah.
the jury's always out, isn't it? Because you can never quite tell if, sometimes you put it on and it works, and sometimes you put it on and it doesn't. I think Dan, that was a bloody good answer. Yeah, bit of slow and on the bottom, something that's not moving a huge amount. Scent will maybe help a little bit, but mate, I like to power fish, so you wind them quick enough that they could barely see it, let alone smell it.
I think it's quite so I'd like to really seriously want to ask Tom Moir, because it's interesting hearing it from a lure maker's point of view. Is it something you consider when you're actually making baits?
I used to add scent to the packaging when I sent them out, but the post office said, "Can you please stop?" Because the smell of squid, crayfish, garlic, it was overpowering the counter. I've used scent.
Yep.
I've had great days using scent.
Yep.
But I've had great days not using scent. So if I need a confidence boost, I'll scent up.
Yep.
But I'm going to give out a little secret, which people will hate. I use boilie concentrates.
Really?
So boilie flavours, yeah.
That's
just a little drop in a packet.
That is
And
interesting.
the plastic is, it absorbs the scent. It's hydroscopic. So, yeah.
Oh, really?
What do you mean boilies? Like, as in, strawberry and tutti frutti, or like crab? And mussel?
Yeah. So you got your monster crab, you got your
crayfish,
blue cheese.
Yeah.
Anything like that.
Yeah, I've got a bottle of the blue cheese one from one of the big. Is it Shillings?
Yes.
Yeah, I've used to use it on my chub baits.
Yeah.
For my cheese baits and stuff.
Yeah,
like
100%.
that. Yeah. It goes back to the cheesy stuff that me and you were playing around with last time, wasn't it? that was pretty strong.
That was awful, wasn't it? Absolutely stunk. Yeah.
I showed someone that today actually, and they got it in their fingers and hated me for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's that monster crab as well.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Right, I'm going to put my teacher hat on. Should we go round the room to our guests and see what they've been doing recently?
Who are we going to
Who
first?
you pick, Charlie. Who are we going to first?
Let's go to Tom first.
Tom
H.
Tom H. Mr. Hunt, can you just give the viewers a very brief summary of what you've been doing lately and brief plans for the next few weeks, months, please?
Well, I've got a new job at West Inn this year, so that's been all systems go. So really, really busy with that. Particularly our sort of saltwater guys during the summer. I think bass and wrasse and pollock and all that sort of fishing during the summer is just really, really taking off now. WPC last weekend, went for the win again and got another podium, came third, but it just keeps escaping me and Kev. It is probably the toughest one to win in the UK, I would say. Grapham can be a ball breaker of a water, multi-species, super high level of competition, and also you don't get to practice. So, but we had some fantastic zander fishing. We had perch over £4 each, so it was good, but we just couldn't sneak over the line for the win. And then upcoming, well, I had the windows open last night going to bed, and you wake up in the morning and there's actually a little chill in the bedroom now rather than being roasting hot the whole time. So autumn is in the air and I'm very much looking forward to it. I literally said to my wife the other day, I can't wait to feel cold again. As much as I love a warm summer, I'm a bit sick of it now. Can't wait for the predator season. Few frosty mornings, bit of pike fishing. So, yeah, just looking forward. And World Championships beginning of October, so 6 weeks away. Was in Poland, then got changed last minute. We're now in Czech Republic.
Oh, really? So, I didn't know they changed it.
Yeah, they changed it for geopolitical reasons. Obviously, quite close to the Ukraine border.
Yeah.
And yeah, a little bit of a last minute dodge over to the Czech Republic. So if anyone watching has got any tips about or any contacts from the Czech Republic, I've got a couple, but not loads.
If you watched the last podcast, Mr. Robin Howard, who was our guest on the last podcast, he has got lots of contacts in the Czech Republic and always tells me how good the fishing is there. So he might be able to help out.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Well, I'll have to pick your brains for that one later, Charlie.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, lots going on. And I'm always just getting excited and looking forward to the next thing. You know, it's always changing. So
Brilliant.
Nice
I
stuff.
think-
Let's go. I'm going to confuse Chad. Let's go Tom Moir next.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, it's not been fishing.
No.
I've been very, very slow on the fishing front. What have I done? I lost a fishing combo off the top of my car.
Oh,
So that was an Alpha's Air and a super ultralight fishing rod. So that's in the deepest, darkest Kent. So if anyone's in the area and they do happen to find it on the bottom of their car, keep it. What else? Work-wise, been a bit special. Been a bit exciting.
you've been special.
I've been special.
Yeah.
Tom's always special.
I'm always special. I'm going to make some skirty jigs.
I've seen this progressing.
Yeah.
I've seen it, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's the last 6 months has been tough. What with the current climate and everything else, it's not been easy. So I've sort of just got my head around what I don't have and what I don't do, and what I can do. So with the CNC facility that I've got in house, I can actually make the molds, and I'm a creature bait guy. Yeah, through and through creature bait guy. And one of the things for the creature baits is skirty jigs.
Yep.
But on the market, there's not many that go down to a size 4 hook or size 6 hook. So that's where I'm going with it. So at the moment, I've got living rubber. That's going to be the material it's going to be made out of. So nice flowy material.
Yep.
Natural colours. And that's all waiting in Kentucky right now.
Oh,
I've
really?
I've just checked the shipping, and I've got a hell of a lot coming over. So that's what's next on the card. So I've just finished cutting the first mould, which is a 2.5 gram football head with weed guard. So yeah, just get my head around.
I saw that. I like the idea that you had with the optional weed guard.
Yeah, I actually stole that. I stole that from who was it? Mike Arcanelli. From one of his Barclay lures. And actually, they did a quick demo on how to fit their weed guard because it's optional. So sometimes you don't need a weed guard.
No.
But when you do, you're better off having one.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great.
And that's about it, really. Just plugging away, lots of orders. So thank you for all those that are keeping me busy and the mortgage paid. So really appreciate it.
It's quite a big, for anyone watching this, me and Tom have never actually met in person before. Nope. We've conversed through social media, etc., and obviously mutual with Andy and stuff. But I wanted to say in person that I think it's very impressive what you've created and what you've built as a thing. It's quite a big and daunting step to take something quite niche, as in lure fishing in the UK, and making it your full-time profession. And I think everyone would agree watching this that it would benefit the UK scene if more people took that step. And I think you're a bit of a trendsetter in that way. So I went to show my appreciation in person.
Thank you kindly. Yes, it was a hobby. So the hobby is out there for people. There's 3 people you can get the moulds and the lures off in the UK. Can I say?
Yeah.
Okay, you've got Lure Factors. Mark supplied me with all my plastic in the early days. You've got the Lure Factory, and you've also got Lure Solutions. So you've got all different outlets for your plastisol. It's just don't use your kitchen microwave.
Yeah,
it's
I've heard
stuff.
This, yeah.
It's not good stuff.
Yeah.
That's it.
You've made a sale already. Look, Christopher Dewis.
Yeah.
Let's have a look who's there.
Yeah, we are trying to read the comments, guys, but we've got such interesting guests. It's hard to converse with them and read your comments. But thanks for everyone that's watching so far, and we really need some questions. So if you've got any questions for the guests that are with us, so Dan, Tom H, or Tom M, then keep them coming in or fire them in, and we'll try and pick them up as they come in.
Before we go to Dan, I'd say Tom is he's always intuitive, and also you use a lot of you're thinking all the time, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Always
all
thinking.
The time, yeah.
Always thinking. I've got another thing up my sleeve, which I'm not sure of. Yeah, no.
Careful.
Keep it up your sleeve.
Keep it for now. Keep it
up your sleeve.
Save it.
Yeah,
right.
just in case it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Bucknall.
Let's jump to DB. Hold on.
All right. So, mine's kind of been similar to Thom Hunt's, to be fair, this year. Started working with LMAB in around March time, I think, full time with them. So a lot of stuff behind the scenes, doing a bit of sales and stuff for them. So that's been taking up a lot of time. Been fishing abroad a bit this year for the first time, which has been good. Been to Germany, got a new PB Pike over there. Been to Sweden as well. Had a week in Sweden, which was kind of spoiled me and made fishing a bit crap when I got home for a bit. And just been up to the Isle of Skye in Scotland a couple of weeks ago as well, doing a bit of sea fishing up there. So yeah, trying to travel a bit more. But yeah, this summer's been terrible for fishing. So trying to grind out 2 videos a week when it's been like 30 degrees every single day has been very tough, very time consuming, and yeah, a lot of bad sessions. So yeah, I've been struggling a bit on the fishing front, but like Tom said, it should be getting a lot better now. Now it's getting cooler. Don't have to have the fan on every night. So yeah, looking forward to some nice cold sessions, some winter sessions, start targeting some bigger fish as well, which should be good. And there's a lot of new like LMAB lures that apparently they sent to me last week. So hopefully I'll get them this week and start messing around with those and trying to catch some good fish on them. So yeah,
I see some of the new LMAB stuff that just sort of appeared, and it wasn't, there was no warning, like the tubes and things like that, and they looked really interesting, and they were just out of nowhere. It's like completely out of left field. Boom! Here's a load of new lures. I think that's great. I actually quite like that. Like no build up, just here you go, smash it in your face.
They sent me some samples of those over a year ago. I think it was like last June. I had some samples and then didn't hear anything about them until last week, and they just emailed me and said, "Oh, we've got some new products and we're going to send them out to you." So
brilliant.
Yeah, I think they've had trouble with COVID and obviously Ukraine and stuff. I think there's been a lot of issue with like getting stock and shipping and everything. So
yeah,
I think they've just been on back order for that long, and then they've finally got them in. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll quickly address a comment. We got a comment from Mr. Perch Slayer. What's the reason we stop fishing for pike when it's too hot, but not other species, i.e. zander and perch, when I think we should stop for all when we stop fishing for one? It's quite an interesting question.
Can we stick it up?
Oh, we can. Yeah, we can highlight it. I forgot that. Yeah. Have you done it?
It's also Matt Dunnell sent one in as well about it's been one hell of a tough summer, I think, for the fishing, and the perch layer comments the same as well. So I think that might be more relevant for waters that have banned pike fishing.
Yeah.
So a bit like WPC.
Yeah. It's a hard one for me because I'm not sure I know enough about the biology of these fish and how well they deal with low levels of oxygen in the water and things like that. But I mean, I know that pike don't do well, but I'm not sure I know enough about how perch and zander deal with it. I mean, what's your opinion?
Oh, the theory is that once the water temperature, it's to do with dissolved oxygen and the increased water temperature. That the higher the water temperature, the more the fish get. They move, don't they? They're cold-blooded, so they react to the water temperature. So you catch a pike in the summer, it will really fight hard. You get it on the bank or a boat, and it's still flapping away like a nutter because of the high temperature. It's then when you get it back, does it have the ability to then recover in what is a very low oxygenated environment? And that's, you look at the PAC, they're distributing an awful lot of information about this from scientists, from the people that they've got involved with this. It's kind of like no one knows for certain, but the last thing we want is to catch fish and then for not to go back. So it becomes a kind of, you have to have a cutoff in your head, I think, with water temperatures and get to a certain point. But the same must be true with perch and zander.
You'd think so, but there are species of fish that are more hardy with it, like carp, for example, who are quite hardy and they can live in virtually mud. So I wonder where in the spectrum.
So it's probably to do with the oxygen content in the water.
Yeah,
it's probably a combination of oxygen content, dissolved oxygen content.
Yeah.
How hard the fish fight.
Yeah.
And how well they deal with stress.
I think that's the thing, because with pike, they're generally larger. It's going to be a longer fight unless you're fishing with really heavy gear. They're going to knacker themselves out a bit more, and then it'll take them more to recover. Whereas with a perch, not many of us are catching big 4-pound perch every day. You could generally get them in quite quick and get them returned quite quick, so they're not exerting much energy. What's your opinion, Tom?
I don't know enough about pike.
No.
It's never been a species that I've actually actively targeted for any long period. All my pike that I've caught have pretty much been by mistake. I've probably done 5 or 6 proper pike sessions.
Yeah.
I don't stop fishing for perch though.
No.
But when I have caught pike, I'll take this back to Andy. I was on the float tube 2 or 3 weeks ago and had an absolute nightmare with the 3 pike that I did hook and ended up just saying, that's it, I'm kind of done, because they trying to unhook them, trying to get them back in the water, trying to get out the water. It was just a nightmare because they're just wired. I'm fishing ultralight, so I'm not I'm sort of fishing that power ultralight, which sounds weird as
I know what you
hell,
mean.
but it really,
Yeah.
and in the float tube, they're coming up and you can just like grab them as they swim by.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this is on drop shot, so they're all hooked on the outside of the mouth, but trying to actually get hold of them and to do any sort of fish care with them was a nightmare. So I don't think I would target them so much in the summer.
Thom Hunt, what's your? I mean, from a mainly competition angler, what's your viewpoint on it? Because obviously we saw it with WPC where they removed pike from the card, but still allowed angling for zander and perch. Do you think that's the right decision, or should there have been a different decision?
Well, first of all, I think you could do a 3-part podcast series just on this subject alone.
Totally
There's probably about 1,000 different angles you can come from. But to address the question to start with, what is the reason we stop pike fishing? So I actually come from a marine and freshwater biology background. So I studied at university. I've done a lot of scuba diving in both salt and freshwater, etc., etc. So I've got a bit of an understanding of a scientific background around this. So I'll just outlay a couple of specific points that we do know from the scientific literature. So a pike is actually, ironically, when it's not stressed, when it hasn't used its oxygen, it's actually incredibly tolerant of low oxygen environments. In fact, it's probably one of the most tolerant species of low oxygen environments. And the reason that is because it's called a northern pike, which means it exists in the northern territories and up in Scandinavia and various different places where they have ice out, which could be for anything right up in the Arctic Circle. You'll have pike living under the ice where no oxygen can dissolve through the surface of the water, and they might be underneath that ice for anything up to 6 months. Now, that is on the assumption that they haven't been caught, they're not exerting any energy, but they're super tolerant of very, very low oxygen. When you then raise the water level, the levels of dissolved oxygen go down. But again, not horrendously. So in about 10-degree water, which is coldish, you can have, I think it's about 13 milligrams of oxygen per litre dissolved. And then when you go up to what we had at WPC this weekend, which was 24 degrees, you're down to a maximum level of about 8. Now, a pike can tolerate down to about 0.25. But like I said, I'm totally stressing that is when the water is freezing cold and it's not got any other stressors. So we might, if you still had a high saturation content of 90 to 100%, and you had anything over 6 milligrams per litre, you'd still be kind of relatively okay, but that's on the assumption that we're not targeting them and we're not fishing for them. Now, you do get bycatch, like Tom just said. So, you've got to understand the different levels, got to understand some of the science behind it. And then when it comes to warm water, a pike will specifically die, again, without being caught, no stressors involved. They will have an almost 100% mortality as soon as the water reaches 29.5 degrees, 29.5 or 30 degrees, they will just all die almost instantly. It's almost 100% mortality rate. So they are sensitive to warm water. 24 degrees, in my opinion, is too warm to be targeting them. I personally draw the line at about 16 or maybe 18. And to do with the other species, I've never really seen zander, probably more to do with pressure tolerances because they're searching different levels. They're typically more of a deep water fish. So you're going to get, gassing up and stuff if you're bringing them up from depth. And I've never really had a problem with perch. I've seen them in warm water before get what's called dropsy, when they go a little bit red and their scales get a little bit inflamed. But again, I don't know if that's leading to any mortality rates. But to be fair, I know a lot of the guys that are in the PAC, there is scientific literature behind it, which says you shouldn't go sort of above, well, they say 20 degrees. I think that's generous. But that also comes from where they're on the Norfolk Broads, where they've got tidal, where the tide comes up, floods onto 6 to 10 inches of water in the summer. That heats up incredibly hot. Tide then goes out, so you're pushing all of that water that's been on the flats back into the system. It raises the water temperature even more, and it can get dangerously hot, as well as uneducated holiday makers, fishing around the Broads because it's a big holiday destination. So there's like I've tried to keep that concise. It was probably a long answer, but there's so much to talk about around this subject.
Well, Tom, we missed half of it because something happened this end, so I don't know if everyone could keep hearing.
What we
it.
heard was very interesting.
It was very interesting. But you've got to repeat
I don't
it.
know
No,
which
I'm
half
joking.
you got, but I won't go through it again.
No, but there's a lot of stuff in that we did catch that I didn't know, so it was very interesting for myself.
So what about perch and zander, though?
I think perch are fine. I've never experienced, I don't know about you guys, I've never experienced any issues. I just said a second ago that in certain warm water situations, I've seen them get what's called dropsy, which is like a little bit of a red and inflamed sort of scales. I think it's where they start taking on a bit of, like, I think they have a bit of moisture, like extra fluid under their scales and stuff. So they look like a bit of a pine cone. But again, I don't know if that's a mortality thing, or if it's just then when the stress levels come down. But I think it depends on the style of venue as well. You know, large sheets of water that have got big bits of wind on are very different to very shallow rivers that are, you know, coming through and might not have many whirlpools in or oxygenated water, that type of stuff.
Do you think, just before we go to Dan, because Dan, you've obviously got to follow Dr. Thom Hunt, as Steve just called him. One of the things that I've noticed that if fishing on the fens was the biggest no ever in the summer, because the pike were literally, like Americans call them, hammer handles. The fish they're emaciated. They're like thin as rakes. They've got no body fat at all, and it's like it's got so warm for them that they've just shut down. That's what it seems like. The pike on the shallow fen drains, which is very similar to what you were just saying about the Norfolk Broads. And you can tell by looking at the condition of the fish that actually trying to catch them at this time of year is just a non-starter, because they look half dead. They really are in a bad way. And it's only when you get to like September, October, November time do Fenland pike start to get into any, I would say October, probably mid-November now, because of the changing climate that we're having. Fenland pike are only getting into condition about then, and you can tell by looking at them. So do you think that also going, different venues, different strains of fish, if that exists, I imagine it must do, different water depths and conditions, it's a kind of an answer. You've got to know the areas you're fishing and how the fish will respond within those different areas and certain times of the year.
Yeah, was that directed at me or?
Yeah, it was. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree, and it is, and I think this is why it becomes a very in-depth debate, because you've got some of these PAC guys on the Norfolk Broads, which is a highly susceptible venue. You then can't use the same rules of thumb regarding some of the locks up in Scotland, for example, which are very different, and they've got a culture of fishing for pike all the way through the summer. And I think the best way to, is educate. If you're unsure, ask, or try and gather the information, read the scientific literature. It is out there. It's really interesting. It's long, but interesting. If you care about your fish. And I'd say as a general rule, buy yourself one of those thermometers as well. In terms of safety for pike, it's also amazing to be able to track the transitions of different styles of baits that work for different species dependent on water temperature. Like my crankbaits, for example, it's like when I hit 14 degrees, a crankbait is always my number one go-to, fished really fast. And, but that's very temperature dependent. So get yourself there a few quid on eBay, get yourself, like you guys that are all out there listening, go test the water temperature. And if it is creeping up into the teens, consider just swapping to other species. Or I think that's why saltwater fishing is getting so popular now as well. Bass, wrasse, pollock.
Definitely.
That's a great alternative for us as lure heads, because it is difficult for us to put the rods down.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. Right, so quickly jump to DB. Just to give a sort of alternative. I don't know if you follow that, but
yeah, I was just going to say.
I'll try and give you an alternative viewpoint as a content creator, which is so dependent on that. What do you do, when it's this hot for such a sustained amount of time?
Yeah, so I only fished for pike for the first time this last week after I had all that heavy rain. Like Tom said, venue specific is key. I think there's a lot of deeper, fast rivers that I'm perfectly happy fishing, whereas like the smaller rivers, I'll leave them You know, alone till a bit later in the year. But I, like you said, I've got the little thermometer thing that you mentioned as well. So I'll take that out to certain rivers, and 18 degrees is sort of my cutoff for pike. But even other than that, I only really target jacks in the summer. I wouldn't try catch a big pike, just because they put up such a good fight. So like if I'm fishing with my heavy gear and I catch a 2 pound fish, I can get it in so quick. As opposed to, you know, a 20 pound pike that's going to fight for its life, get exhausted. Even if the water temperature's fine, it's going to take a lot longer to recover just because of how much harder it's fought, as opposed to in winter when they come in quite a bit easier. So yeah, I'll target smaller pike. I'll still use bigger lures, but you fish them slightly different. You catch more jacks, basically. One thing I do try and like lay off a bit when the water gets hot is trout fishing, like wild brown trout, because they fight really hard as well. And I think that I personally don't think they can handle the higher water temperatures as well as pike or perch or anything like that. So I'll stop trout fishing.
It's different. It's rainbows, but like obviously where I work at Hanningfield, the fishing has been absolutely awful. The trout have just totally switched off. As someone said to me, that basically anything over 19 degrees, trout fishing is a total waste of time. And Hanningfield's been over 22 for weeks now. I think we're at 24 or something. Last time someone checked last week. And yeah, I can see the fish on the electronics and fish finders and things. They're just sitting flat on the bottom, not doing anything, not expending any energy, not moving around, not feeding. Obviously, the odd one still gets caught here and there, but I don't. For trout, they're a cold water species at the end of the day. I don't think they like this hot water at all.
I mean, the pike do the same in that when the water temperature is really high as well. I've got quite a lot of clear venues near where I am, and the amount of pike you see just sat in the edge, not moving. You pass a lure in front of them, and they just won't move. Yeah, and I think that's when the water's too hot. It's like when it's too cold, they just want to sit on the bottom. Yeah, it's uncomfortable for them. When it's too hot, they just want to sit, and just like we do, when it's too hot, you don't want to do anything there. So I think
exactly. Yeah,
I think the fish react exactly the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll still target that, especially at weir pools and stuff like that. You know, the water's constantly moving. Obviously not when it's like 40 degrees.
But, who wants to be fishing in 40 degrees anyway? Let's be honest. Regardless of what you're fishing for, I can barely walk out the front door, let alone go fishing.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the same for like perch and everything. I won't target the big ones at this time of year. Obviously, I'll catch them as bycatch, but I won't specifically go out and go for one big fish like I would in winter. You know, this time of year I use more of a numbers time of year, and I think you land the fish faster and you get some good sport. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, we'll quickly cycle through some. Go on, Tom.
So there's, if you're going to cycle through the comments, there's one just from Paul Bickley, Bickley's Angling Adventures.
Where is it? Yeah.
So for those that don't know, Paul's trying to raise awareness of childhood cancer because of his personal life with his daughter.
Yeah.
He also sent a lure to you guys.
He did
previously, and it's one of those Robinson lures.
That's right.
Absolutely
The
fantastic
one that was brilliant.
And next month is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month.
Right.
And he asked me to provide some lures. So there's going to be some content coming from Paul and a few other Facebook guys using the lures that I made. But just wanted to say hi. No worries, Paul. Thank you very much.
Paul's been an avid listener since the start. We've conversed with Paul quite a bit. Lovely guy. Brilliant. That lure he sent us was incredible, wasn't it?
It was, That was a long time ago.
It was. It seems like 5 minutes ago, but it was quite a long time ago now. Yeah. Okay, right. So next question we've got from Esox Lou. I live on my local canal bank and have fished this water for 25 plus years and never met a bailiff or EA rep. Makes me wonder what I'm paying my annual fee for. What do you guys think of this? Now, this is a very hot topic.
Where's my soapbox?
Yeah, here we go. Yeah. I'm going to give a quick rundown of my opinion. I'm going to keep it very brief because otherwise we're going to be on this all night. So our local EA enforcement agent in Essex is the only one that covers all of Essex, Suffolk, and a little bit of Norfolk, I believe. So that's why you don't see them very often. It's because there's one guy doing all of them. But for what they do for your fee, I know what's coming from Andy, so I'm going to offer the alternative viewpoint and to tell you a few things, experiences where they have done something. And I've been in a previous life. Excuse me, and I apologise. I've been a carp angler, so I've fished a lot of club lakes and syndicate lakes and things. And like at this time of year, when you start to get low oxygen, you have these oxygen crashes, or where the fish really start to suffer. The EA can be there like that I've been on lakes a couple of times where we've had an issue, the fish start suffering, and EA will be there really, really quickly with manning the pumps and trying to help revive the lake and put more oxygen back into it and help the fish. So I've actually experienced that a couple of times. So I've seen it. Obviously, they can't be everywhere all the time, and I'm sure there's people out there who have asked for help and not had it. But I have personal experiences. So that's just one example of things that I've seen they've done. So it's a lot of it. So it's not just the guy on the ground checking license fees. There's a lot of stuff they do in the background, which is what I'm trying to get across. If I can hit Phil, Andy chomping at the bit next to me. So
Well, I don't want to sort of because we have something called the Fenland Guardian scheme that we set up here about 3 years ago now. I think the important thing is to recognise there are different parts of the Environment Agency, and you were talking about the fisheries team.
Yeah.
Whereas this chap's talking about the enforcement team.
Yeah, different things.
And this is where we have the big problem with the Environment Agency. 2 years ago, I found a polluter, a longboat was polluting the river. I phoned the Environment Agency straight away, and they were superb. They dealt with it. I don't know if the person was taken to court, but they were on it within hours. So my problem isn't with the Environment Agency. My problem's with the fisheries enforcement part of it, because the Environment Agency don't have any political will to want to attack's the wrong word, isn't it? It's to deal with the problems that we have on our fisheries. It's a massive cost for them because they have to put boots on the ground. It's also the Environment Agency are scared beyond belief with things like health and safety and having injuries in the workplace. I know this for a fact because I've been on a few Zoom calls with them. They don't want to liaise with volunteer services for that reason, because they are really concerned about someone having an injury or someone being attacked while being a volunteer. So that's where the VBS thing comes in. They don't want these volunteer services, but they were kind of forced into it many moons ago. Otherwise, they were going to lose out on a huge chunk of funding, and that was told to me by someone from the Environment Agency. And particularly in Fenland, I can't talk about other areas of the country, but from this chap's message, it would seem similar, that each region is in charge of its own budget. So they will delegate amounts of money to different strands of their needs. So fisheries is vital, but if we haven't got any fish to protect because they've been stolen, taken, blah, 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 the fisheries part is a bit irrelevant in my opinion. Enforcement is a big issue. With all the strains we have on a small island, now has a large population of many different cultures, we have a finite stock of fish that's available. And a bit like the previous question we spoke about summer fishing for pike, sand and perch, we need to preserve our fish stocks. So I've got a big issue that the Environment Agency do not have the political will to take on fisheries enforcement sensibly or properly and deal with the issues that are at hand. They're always trying to skirt the issue. And that's the biggest frustration, particularly in Fenland that we have. We've got there's a big migrant workforce that have moved into the area in the last 20 years. And we've seen the increased number of gill nets, set lines, and so forth in the area has been huge. And weekly, even the local commercial fisheries, a friend of mine, Alex, runs Rookery Waters. They have guys come down, they're trying to steal fish and so forth and so on. It's happening constantly. It's a cultural thing, but it needs stamping out, because otherwise we're going to have nothing left to fish for on lots of these waters. So sorry, who was the guy I sent the message in?
Esox Lou.
Yeah, very good question. I do wonder as well, and I wonder what we're paying for. I'd rather my rod license money go all towards enforcement for the next 5 years, and then they can start to look at other strands, because if we don't preserve what we've got, what is the point? So I kept that as short as I could.
Tom, have you had any encounters?
Yeah, I've actually been checked a few times. I say a few times. I've been fishing 30 years, and I've probably been checked 5 times. 3 since I've been up here. So, and I was Kent before and Leicestershire before that. But for me, it's a boots on the ground thing. If you're not, from my background, my military background, you don't go into an area this size with 2 guys. Trying to keep an eye on this whole area of responsibility. It's just not going to happen.
No.
So then you're relying on people to report stuff. some people do, some people don't. If you do report it, does it go anywhere apart from just a missed thing?
Yeah.
But
maybe I'm just too sympathetic because I know our local enforcement agent, and I know how it's not his fault that he's the only one.
No, the guys on the ground are doing a great job, but they're not. There's not enough of them.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. That's for me. I'm maybe a little bit too sympathetic, but I having a personal attachment to the person. I sort of. I
asked via Facebook for our area, and I said about, well, if people are allowed to take pike and they're allowed to take perch, they're allowed to take these fish out of waters that aren't owned by anyone.
Yeah.
Why don't we restock them?
Yeah.
So why is there no restocking program for pike and perch?
Yeah.
And the answer was that the fish farm they use don't do pike.
Right.
That was it.
Oh,
they don't get them, so they don't do it. But for me, if the one thing that people are taking is the predatory fish, then surely you should have you should replace them.
We've had this conversation, myself and Andy, many times about how lacking we are in the UK in a lot of ways with fishing. I don't want to sound too depressive because I actually enjoy fishing, but when you look to places like the States and how their public waters are and how they're treated and how the fish stocking programs and things like that, we're worlds apart. And will we ever get there? Probably not. But if we can get a tenth of the way there, we'd be a lot better off than we are now. Dan, did you ever you bumped into your local enforcement agent? Or?
Yeah, I've met I've had my license checked once, which is just in the middle of nowhere on a canal. Just me and the license guy, no one for miles, no one else. I didn't see another person fishing. They were just wandering around.
Yeah.
It depends on the clubs in terms of bailiffs. One of my local clubs, you're lucky if you go on and you don't see a bailiff.
Yeah.
And then a few other clubs that I fish, I've never ever met a bailiff from them. So, some more angling clubs, some are very proactive, and you can tell by the way their fisheries are looked after. You never see poachers or anything. Other ones, you see the trademark fire pits on the floor and stuff like that, where you go to bailiffs, and they know where they can get away with not getting seen. But I think, like Andy was saying, it wants all the license money to go to enforcers. I think even if all the money just went into wages of enforcement agencies, I don't think they'd have enough for you to see them regular. I think maybe how much do you think they get from licenses? Like 30 million quid a year, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, I forget what it is. Yeah,
like 1,000 people full-time wages. So I mean, to cover all the waters in the UK, they'd still have a lot of walking to do.
Yeah.
So I think
totally. Yeah.
Even if all the money went to that, I don't think they'd be able to cover it. So I think all the waters most of the waters being in private clubs, and the private clubs proactively looking after their own waters is probably the best thing for fish preservation and stuff like that. But again, it's finding people who will want to do that.
That's the thing, because you put yourself in the firing line by being that bailiff. You put yourself in the firing line and open yourself up to potential abuse.
What powers does a club bailiff have?
Well, this is it.
None.
Yeah.
None at all.
Yeah, they just laugh at them and carry on. Yeah. Tom, what's your experiences of you bumped into the local bailiffs or anyone in the enforcement agents?
You know what? It is slightly depressing, because you've got to imagine the five of us on here are on the bank a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
And I've been fishing, coarse fishing, carp fishing, predator fishing for 25 years. And I reckon I've had my license checked 4 times maybe. And that is a slightly depressingly low number. Because if people know that there isn't a huge amount of enforcement out there, they do feel like they've got a free ticket to go and put out the lines and the nets that Andy's discussing about, and I think it's brilliant that he's, with the Fenland scheme in particular, he's taken it into, his own hands, as, or a bunch of you have, to try and police your own waters, because I think to a certain degree you have to. There is, I think, to a certain degree, we've got some deep questions tonight. We've got warm water. We've got bloody EA bailiffs. Where we get? I think we're going to get the big three. Someone's going to ask about otters next.
We've got a good one coming up. I've got a good one to knock on to the next one.
Yeah.
Can I just say something a second? If you see Tony's last comment about EA bailiffs visiting the big commercials because they'll catch more people. There was one time my brother was fishing. It wasn't really a commercial, but it was a heavily catfish lake.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just sat with him while I was fishing. Someone came running around the lake shouting that the Environment Agency are coming down.
Yeah,
probably 75% of the people on the lake got up and ran away before the bailiffs came down. It was like, most people didn't have licenses then. So
No.
I've got one more
But
thing
no.
to add about what Tony put. This is what I don't understand. If I ran a commercial fishery, I would want everyone to sign in as they bought a ticket with their car license plate and showing me their rod license.
Yeah,
Because then it's because at these commercials. I mean, I talk about Alex Bates, and he runs his at Rookery Waters. It's probably the biggest up and coming commercial complex in the country. They were very close to hosting a Fishermania final on there this year, and they've run it superbly. And the amount of time and effort the farmer and his family put in, and they've grown this commercial up for the last 20 years. And Alex and his dad, and they're there from 5 a.m. till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and they've got a calf on site now. The whole thing is really growing superbly, but they're finding people stealing fish, and I just to me everyone has to go upstairs and buy tickets. It'd be the same in all these commercials. I don't think the commercials need any bailiff in if they took it under their wing to actually do it themselves, because that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Because my fish stocks.
Yeah.
What we need are people out in the wilderness keeping an eye on things, because what's happening 2, 3, 4 miles in the fen on a fenland waterway, well, it's mayhem. I can tell you what's going on because we find stuff, but we find it 6 months later, or dog walker finds it 3 weeks later. So I'd actually disagree slightly. I'd reverse what that chap last put and say, if I was a commercial, I would actually police it myself, and you can do it very strictly because everyone has to come upstairs to wherever they sell the tickets first to get a ticket. And then what you find is also on these commercials they have they have a lot of local anglers who visit the fisheries a lot. So they tend to be the eyes and ears on the lakes as well at the commercials. They're all like a little team.
Yeah.
So they've got lots of locals who are visiting these places 3 or 4 times a week with pleasure fishing, or the match anglers who might visit it once or twice a week. So it's got a lot of eyes and ears naturally.
Yeah.
But the biggest worry is all the other places that never see a soul.
Yeah.
And how you police that is a huge question.
I've got a quick one to jump in with, actually, because there's a couple of Eastern European chaps that I know that are super proactive in terms of volunteering for the EA and a part of a scheme called Building Bridges. Because they obviously recognise, that Eastern Europeans have a completely different culture, and a lot of them fish for food, etc., etc. So trying to educate them when they come over. However, going back to a point that you made a minute ago, which was also about like the safety of bailiffs and stuff like that, there is a page that you can go on which gives lists of all of the codes of violations that people have. So this is after they're convicted.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Right. And it's got certain codes. So it might say whatever, Joe Blogs lives at this address. This was the date of the whatever. And you can look up the code. So it would be like he was fishing without a license, or he was fishing out of season. The fines that people get are mostly between, say, 500 quid and about 2 grand. But if you look up the codes, because you can see a list of how much they get fined once they've been convicted, the ones that are all 2, 3, 5 grand are all the ones that involve violence on the part of the perpetrator as well. So that gets them bigger fines than fishing without a rod license, or taking a fish that's not the right size, or whatever as well, which I do think is quite an interesting thing. But if anyone's interested, try and Google it. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's on the EA page, but it's got a list of all the convictions and the codes, so you can go and look it up. And they do. They name and shame people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I'm gonna try and cycle through these a bit quicker, because we're doing what anglers do, and we're getting bogged down and chatting on things for way too long. There was another great comment or question here somewhere, which is obviously gonna no, nearly as good as otters. So, Matt Dunnell, one that's always got me is the close season in regards to spawning, and no one seems to know why close the rivers for spawning and not canals. That is
not canals or still waters.
Yeah, or still waters, or anywhere else apart from rivers. Yeah, it's a
No
strange
one
one.
knows the answer to that.
No, and to be
It's
honest,
money.
yes, it is money. Well, the thing is, what winds me up more than anything about that, and I'm quite passionate about this topic because it's very prevalent on my local river. They'll stop anglers from fishing from March till June to try and to allow the river to recover and all these natural things to happen, which is lovely. And I actually quite like the idea of that. And I like the magical June 16th. I'm quite nostalgic and quite romantic about it. Yet the bloody place is full of bloody paddle boarders and dog walkers and people ripping things out of it. I just think, well, why am I not fishing when these guys they're all stomping through the river in their boats and paddle boards and dogs jumping in and out and wrecking everything, and I'm not allowed to fish? I think it's and I'm the one that bloody pays for the license to be able to do it, and all these people coming for free and wrecking all the stuff that I want to be doing. So I get a little bit sour about that, and I think if it's one rule, I'd happily take the rule: no fishing on the rivers between March and June. But no bugger can go anywhere near it either. That I'd be happy with that, but it's not the way, and that's what riles me up a little bit about it.
Well, it's about 3 years ago. They asked, they sent out, didn't they?
That's right.
To anglers.
Yep.
Should we get rid of the close season? Yep. And anglers said yes.
Yeah.
And then they went, well, we were only asking. We weren't going to do anything.
It
was a big backtrack, wasn't it? It was almost like a whole Brexit backtrack sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like,
So, Tom, are you in favour of a close season?
I'm the same as Charlie. There's no. We've spoke about this a lot, haven't we? And I see your point. I don't think you can have a close season on the rivers and not everywhere else if it's for spawning.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually look at the reasons why they said, no, we're going to keep it, it's because of the landowners and their fisheries. It was too much to have a close season removed from the rivers because of fish stocks. But fish are spawning totally crazy times. I was fishing 2 years ago and catching spawn-bound perch left, right and centre to the point where it's like, I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
But saying that, we in this country, we fish and measure by weight.
Yeah.
And so all these big tench that are coming out,
all spawn bound.
They're all spawn bound.
Yeah.
So we're actively targeting fish prior to spawning and pre-spawning.
Yeah.
That it's a bit hypocritical.
I know.
So what would your utopic answer be?
Just get rid of it.
Really?
Yeah, just get rid of it.
Okay, so who should we go to next? Dan?
Let's go to Dan.
Let's go to Dan. Put him on the spot.
It's a tough one, to be fair. When it comes to like the middle of March, when it's coming up to close season, you don't want it to close because you might have good fishing or whatever. But certain venues do need a close season, I think, especially the higher pressured ones. But I do think that some non-rivers should have a close season as well. Like there's certain, lakes, wild lakes or wild canals that aren't like stocked or anything. I think they should be treated like rivers, maybe commercials and things like that kept open. And on the flip side, potentially other venues such as the Broads, maybe, have a close season there in the summer, where it's strictly no fishing and, you can't say, I'm trying to fish for perch when I'm catching pike or whatever, because that's such a big, taboo. Fishing on the Broads for pike. And like Matt, who asked the question, I fish with Matt quite a lot. There's a lake that we fish that's really shallow. Fishing's amazing. During the close season for pike, they spawn really early because it's shallow. They'll spawn in sort of March time. And then because it's only like 2 meters deep, you get to the end of May, it's way too hot to fish. So I think somewhere like that should have a close season again, sort of in summertime, to prevent fish mortalities. But yeah, I think it should be kept on the rivers, to be fair. As much as I'd like to fish them whenever I want, I think for the fish stocks and fish recovery and, future fishing and everything like that, I think it's a good thing.
But should we, I'm going to throw a slight spanner in the works, should we be a little more adaptive and say that the local controlling club or whoever it be say, okay, well, the water's now hit a certain temperature in our locale, and the fish are likely to be doing what they're going to be doing in this time of year, we will shut for a month, or we will enforce that rather than having a nationwide blanket, which is a little bit of a broad church and it doesn't really cover How can you say that all the fish in the country are going to spawn within these 3 months? It just isn't true. It just doesn't happen.
Well, if you're in Yorkshire, it was different anyway.
Exactly.
Well, I think we're putting a very modern take on the close season, which is a very old bit of law, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas when it first came in, it wasn't to protect the fish from anything else. It was to protect the fish from being taken.
Yeah.
So it was the fishery management. So it was a fishery management tool, so that you weren't taking egg-bound,
spawn-bound. Posh fly anglers a chance to use the rivers without us nasty coarse anglers.
Yeah, exactly. So you got the guys that are taking for the pot.
Yeah.
Back in whatever century the closings were brought in, and then they were being forced not to take them because it was stock management.
Yeah.
But we're not doing that now.
No.
So that's why I think, well,
it's an antiquated thing.
Yeah,
it really needs updating.
Yeah.
And I think that's my sort of, it needs to be reviewed at least. Tom, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with what you just said, actually, Charlie. I think so. I heard, and I'm fairly certain this is true, but I heard they, back in the days when they actually designed these rules around the close season, back when the bloody Magna Carta was written or something, they had such little scientific data or evidence around it that some people thought it should have been the beginning of March and some people thought it should have been the beginning of April, and they couldn't actually figure out who was right, so they ended up meeting in the middle, which why it starts on. Have you ever thought to yourself, why is the 15th of March random? Well, it's because no one knew any better and they argued about it, and most people thought it was one and the other, so they met in the middle. But yeah, I think I would actually, as long as you had, I mean, you open a can of worms, because then you've got every fishing committee that's then got the rights to, I suppose, create the rules around whether they do or don't and whatever. And that's going to open a massive can of worms. But I think that's not a bad shout. I see various different gravel pits, for example, where they post up on Facebook, right, guys, the carp have started spawning and there's going to be no fishing for the next 3 weeks or whatever. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, is leave it up to the fishery owners or the controlling clubs to try and manage it themselves. And I think you'd end up with quite a bit more data then as well, because some people are going to choose A and some people choose B and some people choose different strategies. And then over time, you might start to figure out what works and what doesn't. But it is a random old school rule. And personally, I'm in favor of scrapping it because I don't think it scientifically actually means much. But
no, I'd agree with you. I think it needs a proper review, an independent review, not some weird survey that anyone can sign and with no sort of back into their thoughts. Just an opinion. I think we could do with an independent body to review it and say whether it, categorically, is it the right or wrong thing to do.
They should do it more species specific as well. Like in the Netherlands, I think they have different close seasons for pike and perch and stuff like that. So I mean, if they try to do it a little bit like that, it might make things. It probably make things a lot more complicated because people can't understand it already. But it might make things a bit clearer to us a lot.
Christ, people can't grasp the trout and coarse fishing seasons. Like, you imagine trying to eat every different species.
One other interesting point that Andy mentioned a second ago about how in America they have fishery management, like proper management schemes on all of the big ones, especially for their freshwater species like walleye and bass, and they have stocking programs, and they do run it from a very commercial standpoint. And it has lots of enforcement bailiffs and lots of enforcement, they've got a whole system set up around that, but at the same time they've got the industry for it. They've got the dollar signs where people want to buy fishing kit, go fishing, and it's seen as much more of a commercial thing. And you do have to ask yourself, like, how good is it for the industry when you've got 25% of the year that you can't fish rivers? So that's kind of another interesting angle as well, that if we want to look after our fish stocks and we want to have more bailiffs and we want to have, there's no doubt about it, you need more money in the system. And that's only going to happen commercially. It's not going to happen off volunteers. It's not going to happen off government funding. It needs to happen in the private sector commercially for it to be valued. And then when the money comes, things start happening. So,
can I just put in quick? Are either of you two Liverpool or Man U fans?
Oh.
Should we go on
Not
for
really
10
a
minutes?
football follower.
I know, because I was just again. I go back to being a school teacher. We used to have parents' evenings on like big football nights, and wonder why no dads turned up. And I'm just worried. It's now hit 8:00, and we've got quite a few people watching. I think we were going to stop after about an hour. Should we? Are you okay for another 10, 15 minutes, guys?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a suggestion though.
Go on.
We actually haven't talked about virtually anything to do with actual fishing.
Well, I'm slowly scrolling through the comments, and there's a lot of big topics like cormorants, otters,
Politics mostly.
Yeah. So,
Okay, let's finish off on a big fishing question then. Come on.
right.
Can you?
So here we go. It's a good one from Tony. It's quite a broad question, but I'm gonna leave it up to the interpretation of the guests. Less controversial subject. Where's the UK lure scene going? Now, I'm not going to expand on that. I'm going to let you take that wherever you want to go with it. So let's start with you, Tom, this time.
Which one?
Hunt, Mr. Tom H.
Oh.
Where do you see the UK lure scene going? And I'm going to leave that up to your interpretation of what that means.
Yeah. So again, working with Westin, understanding now some of the industry stats on it. And I've been doing quite a lot of research. We're generally, lure fishing is accounted about, depends which stats you look at, but we're about between 3.5% and 5% of total angling that goes on. So carp is obviously a massive section, and match fishing is a big section, fly fishing, etc., etc. But it is one of the few that is growing, which I think is fantastic. I think that's very simple. It's really easy to do. You don't have to prepare bait. You can have something in your bag or the back of your car. You can steal an hour from a busy lifestyle. I think it fits into a very modern lifestyle, and you can get your little fishing fix. So I think lure fishing is going great guns. I think to a certain degree, there's a little cool element about it as well. So it appeals to the younger people. And again, it's affordable to get into. You haven't got to have 3 buzzers and a bivvy and 3 rods and boilies and, a pole and a seat box and blah, blah, blah. You can get away with starting from like 100 or 200 quid for a full setup. So I think it's really accessible. It's really good for youngsters. Really good for getting people connecting with fishing again in a new kind of style. And I think it's, it might never get above 10%, but I think there's a good buzz going at the moment. And it's, it's certainly one of the most exciting styles I've ever tried. So I think it's, I think it's fantastic.
I actually totally 100% agree with you on that sort of accessibility to lure fishing. It's such a great jumping in point for kids because it's active, that it's exciting. There's all little bits and pieces they can play with, and I think really that's where we should be pushing kids into. I think for a period of time there was a lot of pushing of kids towards carp fishing through the magazines and media and things like that, and it was quite disappointing for kids because they wasn't going out and catching 40s, and there was always like it was inaccessible. Whereas a lot of us here are quite happy just going and catching whatever bites, and I think kids can see that and see the enjoyment in that and see the active nature of it and really get into it. My biggest thing is, and I know the people are out there, we need more guys like DB, like Tom, like us, people who are at the forefront and pushing it into the media and really sort of, I know the term influencer gets chucked around a bit, and again we've got a whole new topic there we don't need to get into, but we really need these guys going, right, kids, this is good, this is great, get out and do it, and this is where what Alan Blair did for carp fishing, we need someone to do similar to lure fishing and go, it's cool, it's good for youngsters, get out and do it. That's
Guy's job.
Exactly, yeah. And thing is, there's I know me and Dan have had this conversation many times. There's a massive gap for others to do similar. There's so much space in that sector, and I know Dan is not protective of it. He's not a gatekeeper. He wants other people doing more things like he's doing and content creating. We get out there and do it. If you guys are at home and you think you've got something that you can do in front of a camera, it hasn't got to be polished. It hasn't got to be super high level edits. Get out and do it. People will enjoy watching it. There's a huge gap in the market for it in the UK, and the more people doing it, the more awareness it creates, and the more people will get into it and start doing it. So I think that's one of my biggest sort of pushes towards that sort of thing. Dan, what do you think? Where do you see the UK lure scene going? Again, with different
Sort of
perspectives.
the same as you guys, I think, as well. And I think a factor with lure fishing growing now, I think maybe like 10, 15 years ago when there was no social media, people getting into fishing sort of just did like what the parents did. Or, like if your dad was a coarse fisherman, you'd start coarse fishing or a carp fishing or whatever. I think now with social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you can see the different types of fishing. You can learn how to fish without even being shown, really. And if you see lure fishing, you can go out for an hour. You can, like someone's just put in the comments, you can get a full setup for £100. Save up your pocket money. You can get a full setup. You can go out for an hour after school, have a good session. Or I think that's the way it's going, really. Just people who don't have as much time, I don't have time to go out for 48 hours carp fishing. And I don't think most people now, especially with the current economical climate, people will be working second jobs and stuff, but they'll still want that fishing fix. Get out for an hour, after work, just before it gets dark. And I think that's lure fishing is more going to be for the people. It's not going to be for like people who fish as everything. That's everything in their life. But I think it's going to be more for people who want to fish but don't have the time. And lure fishing is.
And it's access to these waters for kids who are getting into fishing. If they do get into carp fishing, it's like, oh, right, I go and pay 20 odd quid a day ticket, or I've got to pay a fortune for a club ticket or a syndicate. Whereas if they get into lure fishing, most people have got a local canal or a little bit of river where they can go and catch wasps. That's all you need, And even now, at my advanced stage in fishing, in at the time I've been doing it, I don't mean in skill level for anyone watching. Age, put it plainly. I still enjoy going and catching small perch. It's still fun, and it doesn't stop being fun.
Tom will tell you exactly how he does it, because his approach is completely different to mine.
And again, this is great today because I'm pinging the same question, everyone getting a different perspective. But as a lure maker in the industry, where do you see us going in 5 years? Do you see yourself getting to a point where you can grow and grow and grow and grow? Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
I get messages every week from guys wanting to get into lure fishing.
Yeah.
So there's loads of new guys out there, and I only really work off of the one social media platform, the Facebook. So I'm getting messages.
They can hear us.
Yeah.
We're back.
Lost you for a second. Yeah.
Did you lose audio?
I couldn't hear you for a second.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're back now.
Tom was so boring.
Yeah, that was it. It just shut the place down.
Someone pulled the internet lever.
Tom
I
was
broke
saying,
the internet.
Yeah. That's just the headline. Tom Moir breaks the internet
for the wrong reasons.
But Tom was saying how he gets messages every day about people wanting to get into lure fishing.
Yeah, they want to get into lure fishing. It is just so accessible, and like Tom said, you don't need to worry about your pint of maggots, or are you going to unfreeze your boilies, or have the mice got into your bait?
Yeah,
you haven't got to worry about that. It's just grab your rod, grab your bag of tricks, head down wherever you're going, and just go fishing. If it's just half hour, how many guys? Lunchtime fishermen.
Yeah,
the clue's in the name.
Yeah,
when it's lunch hour, go down the canal, catch some zander, catch whatever. And that's it. So I think it's growing. For myself personally, I'm reaching a point where I don't want to grow anymore.
Yeah,
because then it has to change.
Yeah,
for me, it has to go from being a personal touch to I need you to do this for me. You need to send that out.
Yeah.
So it's but just from that perspective, it's I can't see it going anywhere else apart from up. Really.
Yeah, that's a lovely positive way to sort of
just saying some of the comments. Sorry, Tom.
I was just going to jump in and just say again, I don't have any experience in fish farming. But obviously, when you look at some of how do we sustain a growing lure fishing industry when effectively you're always fishing for an apex predator? We're not fishing for shoals of roach or shoals of bream. We're fishing for apex predators. So by numbers, by definition, there's always going to be less of them. but again, stocking or there's got to be a commercial element. I wonder if you can breed. Can you breed perch? Can you breed pike to go back into these waters?
Yeah, well, I know you can breed perch because I've been part of committees on clubs in the past where we've stocked perch. They're quite expensive when they get to a large size, and the problem is they don't live very long. So in comparison to like carp, where they might live for 20, 30 years or more, perch don't live very long. So it's
know where there's a surplus of perch?
Where's
these commercials?
Yeah.
A good commercial will net their lakes regularly to allow fish to be taken out, so the carp can increase in size due to biomass. And there's a little perch dominate these carp commercials, and to me, it just makes sense that there's a supply of perch that can be stocked into the local rivers and so forth. It just needs the EA. They can do tests. Again, going back to Rookery Waters, they stocked a local North Level, and the Environment Agency did the required tests on the perch, and they passed all the tests, so they were a clean bill of health, and all these perch were taken out of Rookery Water by the EA and stopped into the North Level drain, which was probably an hour away driving, but they did all that because the EA did the transportation, did all the paperwork, because it was helping the club out as well. So Tom, to answer your question, I think if there was this kind of joined up thinking, we could use the stocks that we have from one source to another and do it in a way which complies with the law of the land, with fish transportation and fish stocking as well. I'm just conscious of the time, Charlie.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so
we haven't lost any viewers.
We've frozen a lot.
The main issue we've got about running on, as much as I'm loving this, is I have still got to drive back to Essex.
And I think there's a couple of comments. I don't want to read them out, but it was one by the Essex angler about his lure fishing, and there was one from the 14-year-old, which I think you should pop up, from Devon fishing. Okay, and I think this is where we should finish that. It's further up, buddy. There, up, down.
This one?
Yep. Okay, and I think this is all what we'd agree on, that youngsters into the sport is the key for this, because if we don't get youngsters into the sport, there is no future.
Yeah.
It's okay us doing it now, but who's doing it 10, 15, 20 years' time? So I think that comment is very poignant.
And let's be honest, who's more enthusiastic than a youngster?
Exactly, it's brilliant. I think we're going to start to draw it to a close. So first of all, Dan and Thom Hunt, thank you so much for getting all your tech sorted your end.
No problem.
Tom Moir, thank you for
walking.
I'm going to take Tom to the pub now and buy him dinner. So
happy days.
Yeah, so it's cost me. I'll take him to Wetherspoons. It's nice and cheap there.
Ooh, mixed grill.
Mixed grill.
Mixed grill. Charlie.
Yes.
This guy here has driven hours, literally weekly, to do these podcasts. So a big thank you to yourself. And the most important people, really, are all those people who are listening. Because we started this off this year as a kind of a trial. We asked our friends to help us out, which they did, hence why we've got them on again now. So thank you three, for your time at the beginning. We will come back again next April, and obviously, me being very competitive, but I can't beat Thom Hunt yet, apart from Perch Mania, but I will get there. We want to make this bigger. We want to double this, triple this in size, because then it gives us a bigger reach. So I know these guys will be on hand next season to help us out, and we'll try and push it a bit further.
And I'm just going to step in here, and a lot of what you guys don't see happens behind the scenes, and this guy is absolutely tireless with getting this bit working. I know he says I do a lot of driving and hard work, but I literally just turn up, sit in front of a mic and talk, and he does all this behind the scenes. He does all the editing and things like that. So a big thank you from Andy from me as well. It's been a journey, 20 episodes in, but I've enjoyed it every second of the way.
Yeah, it's been good, isn't it? Yeah.
Looking forward to season 2, bigger and better.
Dan and Tom, I'll give you a bell from the pub in about half an hour's time, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'm in the garden.
There's been quite a lot of comments about otters and cormorants. We're just going to avoid those.
Totally. Ignore them like they was never there.
Season 2, we'll come back to this.
Season 2 premiere, we're going to talk about otters and cormorants only. Right. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for all the comments.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for everyone being involved. See you next season. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.